Welcome to the Neural Implant Podcast, where we talk with the people behind the current events and breakthroughs in brain implants in an understandable way, helping bring together various fields involved in neuroprosthetics. Here is your host, Ladan neurotech.
Welcome to another Toronto Rehab Week 2019 Spotlight interview presented by IFESS, the International Functional Electrical Stimulation Society. Thanks to them for sponsoring these episodes. In this episode, we talked to one of the founding members of IFESS, Paul Meadows. He's worked in the neurostimulation industry for over 2 decades, going back to Rancho Rehabilitation Medical Center and Mann Foundation and Advanced Bionics. Recently, he was a VP of Research and Development for Imthera Medical, and he was developing neurostimulation devices to treat obstructive sleep apnea. And this was acquired by LivaNova a few years ago. Now, let's listen in and learn a little bit from one of the industry's pioneers, Paul Meadows.
You've been involved with IFESS, for a long time.
I was one of the founding members. I served as its second secretary. Our first, my brain is going, I don't remember the name, Alex Kostov was the first secretary of IFESS. And he unfortunately became very sick and had to withdraw from his position, and I took over. And I was secretary through the end of his term and again, and then became vice president and then president of IFESS. So that's 10, 11 years of service to IFESS, and was a founding member. I also maintained the corporate office and a lot of records, produced the website, the CD-ROM that we had all of our literature produced on. So
you've had a lot of your fingers into this society.
I was pretty busy in the society for a long time.
You were, yeah. So how have you seen it grow and how have you seen it evolve over the years?
Well, we were probably overambitious in how often we should meet. We had an annual conference all over the world, which is difficult to maintain. We had very limited ties to commercial industrial applications, so we did not really have industrial support. I think the smartest thing that the society did was join this coalition of organizations and have a joint meeting so that you could justify not putting on the expense of an annual meeting for maybe 135, 200 members, and 50 of whom would show up at an annual meeting on an annual basis. But I think there's been too much emphasis on applications that are never going to see the light of day, and too much overlooking of previous work that's been done in this field 40 and 50 years ago. And a lot of that has to do with how a lot of the information was published and disseminated. At Rancho, we had an annual report where a lot of this work was published, but it was a privately issued and released report. It was not peer-reviewed journals. There were a lot of peer-reviewed articles that were submitted during that time, but the predominant information transfer vehicle that we had at Rancho was this annual report. And same thing with NIH. NIH sponsored neuroprosthesis applications and contracts is all published within NIH reports, but that's not a peer-reviewed journal. So if the individual contractors published, then it would get disseminated. But I think early on, a lot of these centers just didn't publish often enough. And there are also just an awful lot of people that just aren't going to the literature to look and see if anything has been done before. And for criminy, Einstein said if you keep doing something over and over again and expect a different result, that's
insanity.
That's insanity, okay? So let's learn from the past. Let's not recreate it necessarily. There have been obstacles to getting technology adopted. Like I said, the curricula, I think, of the physical therapy schools are primary users and implementers of this technology. They have not been interested for decades in using a lot of this stuff. Now they're getting a little bit more interested, but that's a primary problem that needs to be addressed.
What's one of the things that excites you the most as you're looking into the next year, 3 years, 5 years? What's really exciting you?
Well, I do see improvements in miniaturization and longevity of devices, new packaging and electronics, better use of existing communication and everyday devices to help make our technology more user-friendly. We're now using smartphones that can control our pacemakers. With that comes tremendous risk because cybersecurity is a major, major problem, and we know even on secure proprietary communication links, users will do the dumbest things. There was an engineer that started this whole problem who had an insulin pump, and he hacked into his insulin pump so that he can control it. It's the dumbest thing I could possibly imagine anybody would want to do. He could have easily killed himself, and it wouldn't have been anybody's fault but his, but industry now all of a sudden had to start taking cybersecurity very seriously. We had the benefit of being on proprietary medical communication bands for years. Med radio medical implant communication service, was a proprietary band from 401 to 405 megahertz, and no one could touch it. It was ours, except for garage door openers and a couple of other things, which are allowed more power, by the way, than medical devices. I don't understand that. But at least the common man wouldn't have a medical implant device in his phone or in his Bluetooth. It was all completely separate. Mm-hmm. But now we've got to worry about all of that. But at the same time, we're going to make our devices more user-friendly for our patients. Right. So it really does make a big difference.
There's kind of this way-off between security and user-friendliness or application, right? So the FDA put out recently the guidelines, or at least some guidance documents for cybersecurity, but I don't know if that completely solves the problem.
It doesn't completely solve it, but it's a good step in the right direction. Yeah. But we're still looking at some basic science that's limiting a lot of improvements. I mean, battery technology. There's only so much energy that you can put into a battery, and there's lots of really interesting things that are being done. And in the meantime, we have these batteries that tend to have a thermal runaway problem if you mistreat them, and that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But we need to keep working in that, and that's basic chemistry and physics. That's a boundary that has to be pushed.
Yeah, well, battery powers are our nemesis for everything, even what's sticking in our pocket with our cell phones, right?
Yes,
Not necessarily what's in our bodies.
Yeah. Can you imagine having a Samsung Note 7 implanted in your body?
No, well, I don't want to keep you much longer because I know you have a board meeting tonight. Yep. But do you have any questions, Ladan?
No, this is really interesting. It's interesting to talk to a founding member of a society that's so old.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Hope you enjoyed the show and were able to learn something new, bringing together different fields in novel ways. Until next time on the Neural Implant Podcast.